These are 5 of the best types of investment strategies that my clients are using. Check which one is yours. Number 1, my personal favorite, negative gearing property investment strategy. In other words, this strategy is also called lose $1 to claim back 40 cents back strategy. So what that really means is if you have an investment property and the rent, for example, is a 3% yield, mortgage repayments around 4.5% to 5%, you're technically making a 1% to 1.5% loss every month on this investment property. So say for example, your loss was $10,000 in terms of net rental income received and mortgage expense going out. Now through negative gearing, you can claim that back, but you don't get all of it back. So for example, every dollar that you lose, you can claim back 40 cents. Negative gearing isn't like a bulletproof way of avoiding tax. It's not. It's for people who want to buy and hold property and want long-term capital growth. And the rent that we receive from our tenants is just to lessen the holding costs of holding onto this property. To give you a rough idea of what negative gearing does through buying property is, for example, if you're on a 500k income, obviously you're paying through the roof in tax. For example, 50% of that goes to the taxman if you don't do this strategy. Now for myself, I accumulate a lot of properties because I can utilize the negative gearing strategy to reduce my tax. Rather than paying 250k in tax, maybe I'm paying 85k in tax. No, subjectively to my situation. And mind you, this is legal tax avoidance. I would say this is for high income earners. And I'm not saying I'm a high income earner. I've seen people who make millions of dollars. But you gotta be around the 350 to 500k mark or even more to do this. It's not for people who are earning under 150k. Because essentially it does hurt your bottom dollar when you're like losing $1 just to claim 40 cents back. But it makes a lot of sense to me where if I lose $1 and I'm getting back 40 cents back, this small holding costs where I'm also losing money but also making a little bit of back, if my property goes up in a lot of high capital growth, which they are because I'm buying properties in Sydney, collectively in 10 years I probably will be banking $3 or $4 million of capital growth. Then losing money every year, like $10,000-$20,000 a year, that's okay. That's a loss I can take. Number 2, positive gearing property strategy. By the way, this video is a little bit long, so save it and favorite for later. A positive gearing strategy is when you select properties that don't have very strong capital growth, because you can never buy property that has very high yield and also high capital growth. So basically, you're expecting passive cash flow every month. This means the rental yield is about 6 or 7% or even 8%, and the mortgage repayments are around 4 to even 5%. So there's a 3% surplus of flow of cash flow for you. Now, this strategy is good for people earning under 150k, not good for people earning 400 to 500 even more, because they have to pay freaking more tax. And what's the point of buying a property that doesn't grow in value? I mean, you get a lot of passive cash flow, like extra $200-$300 per month. But so what? Now, for some people, it's a lifestyle choice. They want to, eventually quit their jobs, especially if they're PAYG. They buy a whole set of property and then it gets passive cash flow. They can, work part-time, work casual, and all that stuff. But for people who are like self-employed, people like myself who work crazy hours but make a lot of money, that's not our preference. We want to buy property that has a lot of capital growth, happy to make a bit of a loss, but in long term, collectively over 10-15 years, bank $10 to $20 million of capital growth. Number 3, the buy, renovate, and flippers. Now, I dealt with a lot of these clients before when in my past, career highlights was that I used to be one of the head brokers for Cherie Barber's buy, renovate, and flip program. So basically these people, watch her show and then they join her course and then they go, oh, let's buy something cheap and then renovate it and sell it. So I do a lot of their loans. In a nutshell, buy, renovate, and flippers, they usually buy a property that has potential. They then, renovate it with cosmetic renovation, paint, a little small kitchen highlights, bathroom highlights to manufacture some growth. But the bad side of it is if you sell it within 12 months, there are no CGT discounts. But the profit you make has to exceed the CGT discount, which is a capital gains tax. So that's something that I don't prefer, but I've dealt with a lot of clients that do that. Number 4 is buying a piece of land and subdivision to make money. So for this strategy, you're basically a wannabe developer. So you buy a vacant piece of land. Usually the zoning is like R2, like residential, but in the upcoming years, it might be rezoned commercially. and that usually takes about 10 to 15 years. And the land is usually, out in somewhere you never heard of. It's usually outside the metro suburbs. So what happened is I had a client about, 10 years ago. He bought a house with a lot of acres of land in Kellyville for $2 million. So that's pretty cheap back then. We're talking about, 20 years ago. Just a couple of years ago, he subdivided this land and had, probably about 10, 15 pieces of land. He's selling it for $750K each per piece of land. This type of strategy is for people who have long-term vision, serious investors, and not your PAYG mum and dad, typical, worker. They don't have that type of vision. They don't have that type of money as well. And honest to God, I don't have that vision as well, because that's a lot of bank to put in to buy a vacant piece of land and hold it for that long, and then have the idea to subdivide it depending on council approval, and then sell it and make tons of money. Number 5, the most safest option is to invest in REITs. So REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. Essentially what it is a stock where it holds a portfolio of properties. What happens, you as an investor might use a stockbroker or a financial planner to invest some money in this stock or this REIT. And then every year you get like a distribution of dividend. Now personally, I have about, 80 to 100K of cash invested in REITs. I also have a financial planner, which I take financial advice, and part of my, super that I have in my super fund is invested primarily in REITs because I love property. Now again, this is a low risk form of investing in property, and it's very long term. You won't get immediate gains like a quick capital growth or passive cash flow from positive gearing, but it can be a strategy mixed in with the other 4 strategies I talked about. So guys, what do you think about these 5 strategies? There's obviously more strategies, so jump in the comments. Maybe there's more strategies that I personally don't know about. I'd love to hear your thoughts and would love to read your comment.